back, relax, and maybe get yourself a snack. Me and you gonna have a little chat about books. Hey guys! So I'm here today to review two books that I recently read. The first of those books is Kin, which is by Snorri Christiansen and is the first one in the Helga Finnsdottir series, mystery series. And the second one is this one, The Hazelwood by Melissa Albert, which is, I believe, a standalone. So I'm going to start off by talking about Kin. Now, I didn't really know much about this before going into it, and it turns out it's a murder mystery, which I should have guessed from the fact that it says mystery on the cover. But it's a murder mystery with a twist because this murder mystery focuses on Vikings. And supposedly we are set in Viking time. I don't actually know when that is, but very old times. And we follow a family, and we follow this family through the eyes of the adopted daughter who is called Helga. She is our main character, and yet we do follow some of the other family members. We see that from her point of view, she's grown up in a happy household, but quickly she realises when the rest of the family comes back for a family reunion, it's not as nice as she originally thought. The family who have taken her in have a lot of dark secrets, and many of them are gonna come to light at this family reunion. So we follow her, and we follow through her eyes the other members who come back from their various homesteads, and each of them has a motive to get the treasure that they think their father has hidden. We don't know if the treasure is real or not, but we do know that they all think it is, and that is the main thing. As the story goes on, and once we've been introduced to all the characters, someone dies, and that's where the real mystery begins. So, that is a quick synopsis. However, did I like this book? Not really. For me personally, it felt too one-dimensional. It didn't feel like it did an awful lot differently, despite the fact that it's supposed to be Vikings rather than modern day. I didn't ever really feel like the Viking aspect was actually authentic. It felt very much forced to me. And each of the characters in this book, I didn't feel like any of them stood out on their own. Even our main character, who is the one that we see the most, she still didn't really feel like an interesting character. She felt quite mundane and quite boring, and I just didn't feel like she had a lot going for her, sadly. So I didn't really care about her, and that's a bit of a problem. I did think that as the story went on, it got better, so the second half definitely a stronger part of the book, and the mystery aspects when they got going were interesting, and I didn't necessarily see everything coming. However, I still just think maybe it's too light-hearted for a mystery about murder. It just didn't feel like that dark and creepy and scary. It felt like everyone was kind of brushing off murder, but maybe because they're Vikings they're used to this sort of stuff. I don't know. Personally, I felt like I didn't really sink my teeth into this. It didn't really grab me and hook me, and I was just a bit so-so whilst I was reading it. It was okay, but that's about it. So I ended up giving it a 2 stars. The next book I read is The Hazelwood, and I picked this one up for a book club. I didn't actually end up going to the book club because it got moved to a day that I couldn't do, sadly. But I read it anyway, and I definitely found it an interesting read. It's kind of almost an urban fantasy, I suppose, because it's set in the real world, and then we have magical elements such as the Hazelwood that we focus on. We follow the life of Alice, and she is the granddaughter of a woman who is a reclusive fairy tale author. She's never really met her grandma, she doesn't know an awful lot about her, but she does know that she's famous in this world, and everyone who has ever found a copy of her book loves it. Now I say found because a copy of her book is very hard to find, and most people cannot find it or cannot keep a hold of it. It seems like the copies are vanishing slowly. So she's never actually read any of the stories by her grandmother. She and her mother have had a very tumultuous life. They travel an awful lot, and it seems like wherever they go, bad luck will find them, and they've spent a lot of time running away and basically having to start over in a new part of town, or a new city, or a new country. Personally, I didn't love the main character, and I find that that's just a personal thing. She just irritated me a bit, but I also feel like there are some elements to this book that are a bit predictable. I think it's a YA story, so possibly it's aimed at a slightly younger audience than me personally, and the main character is a teenager, so she doesn't necessarily have everything sorted out in her life. In fact, she has quite a lot that's not sorted out, And we follow her as her mother goes missing and she finds a friend who will accompany her to go and find her mother again. He's very rich, which is lucky. So they go on this adventure and they end up going into essentially almost like a fairy tale land. And whilst we're reading the book, we get all these fairy tales interspersed in the story as well. I did like the fairy tale elements. I think they were done really, really nicely, and I think the author did a good job of kind of pulling you into the story and making it a bit darker and twistier with those elements. But for me, it just didn't really work as a whole story. It was okay, it was likeable. I enjoyed it more than I enjoyed Kin, because I gave this 3 stars. But for me, it just didn't quite hook me in the same way that I wanted it to. Again, it was a case of a good idea and just not really executed quite as well as I wanted. I don't know if this is a debut or not. Maybe you guys will know. But for me, it felt a little bit like that. It felt like it was kind of the author's first foray into writing and kind of just developing a story. It didn't feel fully fleshed, so I apologise if it's not her first book, but that's how it felt to me, and that's how I read it. So I ended up giving it 3 stars. Again, it was likeable, it was okay, so I would love to hear your thoughts on it. I'm very interested, especially if you have read both of these. Do let me know your thoughts below. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon in my next video. Bye guys!
Thank you for watching my video today. Go pick up a book, then come back and chat with me again.